do you develop cultural rapport? Well, sometimes you need to adapt your style. Does anybody remember this picture? President Bush walking hand in hand with Prince Abdullah on his Crawford Ranch. Now that's some adapting. Show of hands again. How many people think that President Bush was really comfortable holding hands walking through the gardens in the bluebonnets in Crawford with Prince Abdullah? He definitely had to adapt his style a little bit, didn't he? Why? Because this was important. It was rapport. When we moved to Dallas, I'm originally from Washington State. Now, Washington State we call the Evergreen State because we have lots of evergreens up there. As a matter of fact, the license plates on the cars say Evergreen State. I moved to, and of course I'm coming from Geneva too, so there's a lot of evergreen over there as well. Well, I come to Texas, and I decide, well, I want some Texas adaptable pine trees in my backyard. So we get some evergreen pine trees, we put them in the backyard, and by November time frame, after of course a very, very long hot summer, my pine trees have no needles. Now if you've ever seen needleless pine trees, it's a pretty humorous sight. They're not the most attractive trees without their needles. As a matter of fact, they're pretty funny looking. Now, I also had 3 oak trees in my backyard, and it's November time frame, and they're looking wonderful with all of their leaves. So I call what I found out was called an arbologist, which of course is taken from the Spanish word for tree, and is very basically a tree doctor, to come over and take a look at my trees. And I said, I don't know whether I have not watered them enough during the summer and they died. I don't know whether they'll be able to be revived, but tell me what to do. He looked at my pine trees and he said, ma'am, your trees are fine. I said, what do you mean my trees are fine? They don't have any needles on them. They're not fine. Look at them. And he said, they lose their needles in the winter. He said, that's what these do. That's what these pine trees do. And I said, needleless pine trees? And I said, pointed to my big live oak, and I said, but what about these trees? When do they lose their leaves? And he said, ma'am, they don't. They're live oaks. Well, where I came from in Washington State, there were 2 types of trees. Evergreen, which always were green, and deciduous, which looked like an oak tree and lost their leaves every year. I looked at him and I said, let me get this straight. I'm going to have needleless pines in the winter, and my deciduous trees will never lose their leaves. And he says, well, basically, that's true. And I looked at him, and I crossed my arms, and I said, boy, Texas is one weird state. Miscommunication, simply about the word trees. The other thing we have is our tone of voice. I can speak very, very fast like this, and boy, that can be real difficult sometimes with cross-cultural communications. And if I spoke like this, I wouldn't be here. My tonality, high, 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 low, low, low. Different cultures use different types of tonalities. You may have noticed that. There's some cultures, like many of the Latin American cultures, the Italian cultures, the Spanish cultures, who are very animated, highs, lows, melodic language. There's other cultures, many of the Asian cultures, are very soft-spoken. And they're not near as animated, and they don't have the same highs and lows. Have people noticed that? Now, the other element that we have is our body language, which are our mannerisms, our gestures, our social business etiquette, our facial expressions. Have you noticed that there's some cultures that are very expressive, very demonstrative, very outgoing, a lot of different facial expressions? And there's other cultures that have very little. You know, when we teach negotiations in Asia, in various different places, Japan, it's very difficult to read those negotiators because they don't give away their emotion with their faces. They'll listen and look and have maybe some long periods of silence while we're just, talking away. Bottom line is, in your multicultural communications, if your words are in conflict with your tonality and your body language, people are more than likely going to believe the body language.